So today, and I think I'm at chapter 5 or chapter 6. Hmm. There are few things exactly. So in chapter 5, he said that getting oily versus staying oily, which is a really good topic for me. Even though, let me just make it. Getting oily versus staying oily. Good investing is not necessarily about making good decisions. It's about consistently not screwing up. Is it like I think this one is a really good chapter and I'm short on time today. I have classes today that's why so I think I need to do really quickly. There are a million ways to get wealthy and plenty of books on how to do so. But there is only one way to stay wealthy. Some combination of frugality and paranoia. And the topic we don't discuss enough. But let me just make marking. Let's begin with a quick story about two investors, neither of whom knew the other, but the path whose path crossed in an interesting way almost a century ago. One way to stay healthy. So combination of frugality and paranoia. So I'm gonna read aloud because I think I will read only one chapter today and because I'm short on time, that's why I'm doing this. Jesse Livermore was the greatest stock market trader of his day. Born in 1877, he became professional trader because most people knew you could do such a thing. By age 30, he was worth the inflation adjusted equivalent of 100 million. By 1929, Livermore was already one of the most well-known investors in the world. The stock, mar- st- the stock market crashed that year, that unsaid in the Great Depression cemetery his legacy in history. More than a third of stock market value was wiped out in October 1929 week, which days later named Black Monday, Black Tuesday, and Black Thursday. Livermore's wife, Dorothy, feared the worst when her husband returned home on October 29th. Report of wall of street speculators coming suicide were spreading across New York. She and her children greeted Jesus at the door in tears, while her mother was distraught. She hid in another room screaming. GC, according to the biographer Tom Robinson, stood confused a few moments before realizing what was happening. He then broke into in the family in in a stroke of genuine and luck. He had been short the market before stock would decline. You mean we are not ruined? Dorothy asked. No, darling. I've just had my best ever trading day. We are fabulously rich and can do whatever we like, Jay said. Dorothy ran to her mother and told her to be quiet. In one day, Jesse Livermore made equivalent of more than 3 billion. During one of the worst months in the history of the stock market, he became one of the richest men in the world. As Livermore's family celebrated their unfathomable success, another man wanted the streets of New York in desperation. Abraham Karmaski was a multi-millionaire real estate developer who made a fortune during the roaring 1920s. As the economy boom he did was virtually even other successful New Yorker did in the late 1920s, bet heavily on the surging stock market. On 1920, on October 26, 1929, the New York Times published an article that in two paragraphs portrays a tragic ending. Bernard H. Slander, another up to 25 Broadway, was asked yesterday morning by Mrs. Abraham Jermeski of Mount Baron to help him find husband missing since Thursday morning. Kermansky, who is 50 years old and an East Side real agent estate operator, was said by Slander to have a very interest in stocks. Slander said he was told by Miss Kermansky that a friend saw her husband late Thursday on the wall district near the stock exchange. According to the information, the husband was tearing a strip of ticket tape in bits and scattering on the sidewalk as he walked towards Broadway. Is and that, as far as we know, was the end of Abraham Gormley. Here we have a contrast. On the October 1929 crash made Jesse Livermore one of the richest men in the world. It ruined Abraham Gormley, perhaps taking his life. But fast forward 7 years and the stories crossed paths again. After his 1929 blowout, Livermore, overflowing with confidence, much made larger and larger bets. He would far over his head in increasing amount of time and eventually lost everything in the stock market. Broke and ashamed, he disappeared for 2 days in 1933. His wife set out to find him. Jesse L. Livermore, the stock market operator of 1100 Park Avenue, missing, has not been since 3 p.m. yesterday. The New York Times wrote in 1993. He returned, his path was set. Livermore eventually took his own life. The timing was different, but Kermaska and Livermore shared character trait. They both were good at getting wealthy and equally bad at staying wealthy. Even if oil is not a word will apply to yourself, the lessons from the observation applies to everyone at all income levels. Money is one thing, keeping it is another. This is like a really good line to consider. Getting money is one thing, keeping it is another. Let's just check my glasses. If I had to summarize money success in single word, it would be survival. As we will see in chapter 6, 40% of econ companies successful enough to become publicly traded loss of equitable values over time. The profs for on a list of richest American has on average roughly 220% turnover per decade for causes that don't have to do with their transferring money or another family members. Capitalism is hard, but part of the reason that happens is getting because getting money and keeping money are two different skills. Getting money requires taking risk, being optimistic, and putting yourself out there. But keeping money requires the opposite of taking risk. It requires humility and fear. What you have made can be taken away from you just as fast. It requires frugality and acceptance that at least some of you have made an attributable to luck to past success can't be relied upon the repeat and indefinite. What the heck was that? Relied relied upon to repeat indefinitely. Michael Mortgage, the billionaire head of CQ Capital, was asked by Charlie Rose why CQ was so successful. Mortgage mentioned longevity, nothing that come busy farm success for 5 or 10 years, but secure has purpose for decades. Rose asked why. What is? I think we have always been afraid of going out of business. Really? So fear. Only paranoid survive on it. There's been a lot of truth to do. We assume that tomorrow won't be like yesterday. We can't afford to raise on our loss. We can't become balanced. We can't assume that yesterday's success translates into tomorrow's good fortune. Here again, survival, not growth or brains or insights. The ability to stick around for a long time without wiping or being forced to give up is what makes a difference. The ability to stick for a long time without wiping. This should be the cornerstone of your strategy, whether it's in Azure. One of the obvious few gains are so great that they are worth wiping you out over. The order in chapter 4 is a conservative method of compounding. Compounding only works if you can give an acid as an age to grow. It's like planting oak tree. A year of good growth will never show much progress. 10 years can make a meaningful difference, but 50 years can create something absolutely extraordinary. But getting and keeping that extraordinary growth requires surviving all the unpredictable ups and downs that inevitable experience over time. We can spend a year trying to figure out how Buffett achieved his investment returns, how he found the best company that GPS stock best manager. That's hard. They start find equilibrium pointing out what he didn't do. He didn't get carried away with trip. He didn't panic. Sell during the 14th recession he lived through. He didn't really sell his truly his business separation. He didn't attach himself to one strategy, the own of the great few or passing trend. He didn't rely on others' money. Didn't want himself or quit or retire. He survived. Survival gave longevity. And longevity investing consistently from age 10 to at least 89 is what makes compounding together. That single point is what matters the most when describing a success. To show you what I mean, I have to hear a story of Rock Government. There are a few things like I need to say, but more than I want big returns. Let me just start. It was a really long line. But I'm still writing. More than I want big returns, I want to be financially unbreakable. But if I'm unbreakable, I actually think I will get biggest returns because I will able to stick around long enough for compounding to work wonders. But if you want cash prevents you from having to order sillies just during a bear market, the return actually you all on the is not 1%, it will multiply up that because preventing on displays in times stock and sell you can more lifetime return doesn't have winners compound doesn't rely on big earnings. Planning is important. Planning is important, but the most important part of every plan is to plan on the plan, not going according to the plan. What's saying that you plan got large finance and miss planning are critical because if you have positive income certain reason. A barbell personality, optimistic about future, but paranoid about what will prevent you from getting to the future. It's vital. Optimism is usually defined as a belief that things will go as well, but that's incomplete. Sensible optimism is a belief that odds in your favor, and over time things will balance out to a good outcome, even if happens is between fate with misery. And in fact, even though it will be filled with misery. You can be optimistic about long-term growth tra- trajectories up and to the right, but it could save the road between now and then is filled with landmines, and always will be. There are two things are mutually exclusive. The idea that is something that can be gained over long run while being in a basket in the short run is intuitive, but it's not how a lot of things work in life. By the age 20, the average person can lose roughly half the sympathetic connection in its brain as towards in incidental neural pathway are cleared out. But you do know what happened during this period. Why do we do it? 1.3 million Afghans died while fighting 9 major wars. This was off the chart. Like I'm not gonna talk about it. Our standard of living increased 24 minutes on 27 years, but barely a day went by that lack tangible reason for permission. A mindset that can be paranoid and optimistic. At the same time, it's hard to maintain. But seeing things in black or white take less effect than accepting new nuance. But you need short-term paranoid to keep you alive long enough to exploit long-term optimism. This even more figured out days are hard way. He associates good times with the end of bad times. Getting wealthy make him feel like staying wealthy was inevitable and was inevitable after losing. It's an expensive disease. He said everybody to everybody will look in the ghost face in face of adversity. It's so hard to wrap it around. Okay. Oh, I forgot to write one thing. So in this chapter, he mainly talks about if you have money, you can keep with that money for a long term. If you wanna be wealthy, then buy quickly, sell quickly. But if you wanna be wealthy in a long term, you have to keep compounding. You have to stop selling. You have to stop panicking, even on bad times. So it's very simple. And that's it for today, guys. So see you.